Welcome to the InPowered Life Podcast,
a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudi and Anniston, and this is InPowered Life. Welcome to the InPowered Life Podcast. My name is Rudi Riekstins. I'm joined by my co-host, Anniston Riekstins, and today we have a doozy of an episode for you. This is very timely, and we decided to record this episode because of the political arena right now that we're about to walk into, and what does it look like for the rest of 2024 going into 2025. And I really feel passionate about this, and I want to bring a little bit of the curtain back. The last three podcast hosts, guests that I've had on the show have each asked me off camera, do you want to talk about politics? And they got really heated in their beliefs around politics. And so we managed to skirt around those topics, even though the last three guests have been very passionate about wanting to share what are their thoughts or their beliefs around this topic. And so we thought it would be an incredible episode to bring forward to support you if you were choosing not to be triggered by all of what is going to be coming around.
Every time an election year is coming up, I can't help but be like, ugh, because I know that it's like the temperature is turned up on everybody's attitudes and everyone has their own beliefs about everything, not just politics, about everything. We all have these like truly unique belief systems. And I believe that somebody is happy and able to function really well and at a high level in their life to the degree that they understand and honor their belief system whilst being able to honor other people's. And knowing that everyone has a belief for a reason, and it's their lens was created based off of, where they grew up, what their parents' beliefs were, what their community's beliefs were. And you take on those collective belief systems, and then you feel really strongly about protecting them, about defending them. And oftentimes will put yourself into situations where you're getting into conversations and arguments, if you will, that lead to negativity, that lead to you feeling bad. And it's unconscious behavior, I think, a lot of times. And so what we wanted to do today was really just unpack it a bit. And hopefully this will serve you, especially considering the time that we're in and what we're, as we get closer to election day and then even after election day, because then something else happens where we all have a reaction to and responding to based off of our belief system.
I want to remind everybody that's listening to this that is already being triggered by the conversation, that life is simply just serving you. And election years are just a temperature gauge of where are you at on that topic. And it doesn't just have to be around, an election. It could be around religion. It could be, about how to parent children and what to eat and what not to eat and what toxins are or aren't in foods. And so everybody has got a vantage point on any given topic, and everybody else is entitled to have their own vantage point. But this episode is not about other people's vantage points. It's not about talking about what other people think or what other people feel. It's really more a focus on what is it that you feel and why are you allowing yourself to feel that way. There have been times in my life where I have been extremely passionate about topics, and I have dug my heels in to the degree that I've lost friendships or strayed from family members, where I've fought with business partners because we've had very, very strong opposing beliefs, and I wanted to be right. And so I have learned since, and this is my belief, you don't have to take it on as your own, but the more passionate you are about topics, it really speaks into your level of spiritual maturity. And that the more you are tied to a fixed belief and believe you need to defend it, the more immature I believe you are on that particular topic. because I have been extremely immature on topics where I have felt very empowered to stand my position and to defend that position, and then to get other people to believe what it is that I believe. And the more I have grown and the more that I have evolved on all these said topics, the more I find that I let go of what other people need to believe. And it also helps me let go of what it is that I need to believe.
I think if you really start to unpack, and we talk a lot about beliefs on this podcast, I get it. And it's because it's such an important part of who we are and an important gauge in the quality of life that we live. And I like to think of, when you think about a belief, it's just a thought you've thought long enough that it's become hardwired in your brain. And so let's say, for instance, you have a specific belief about as it relates to politics. Let's stick with the theme of politics. And let's say that belief, was originated from your own life experience, right? And through the lens that you looked at life through, and that you feel very certain about the truthfulness of this belief and the importance of this belief. Well, I think first you have to acknowledge, where did the belief come from? And where did it come from in the first place? Did you hear it from somebody else? Because we are always responding to things that we hear or we see. And then based on that response, if we look for validation and we start looking around us, we will always be proven true. Our belief system is always going to be proven true through a self-fulfilling prophecy because of the way that our brains work. And I think that if you can actually just take a moment with what Rudi was saying and the things that really trigger you, the things that you feel so strongly and heated about, that if you even hear someone in the vicinity of you speaking against that opinion or sharing a belief that isn't aligned with yours, that it's you feel an emotion in your body. If you feel an emotion, then you've got some energy around that. And because you can hear people talk all day long and they'll be sharing their opinions and beliefs, but not everything they say is going to trigger you. It's the things they say that trigger you that you're meant to pay attention to, because there's something for you there. There's something for you to learn, something for you to gain, maybe an unresolved situation from your past. And so all of this stuff is just practice. So if we go back to your belief system and you start looking at where did this belief come from, and is it even fully true? Or can I acknowledge that my belief is based on opinion? And it's also based on perception. This is my perception of what is happening, but I don't think there's any one person on this planet who knows everything, because for a belief to be 100% fact, you would have to be able to prove the intentions of all the people that are a part of that belief. Well, you can't possibly do that because you're not in their heads. You don't know what they're thinking. You think you know what they're thinking. You think you know what their intention is, and you have a story around that. But that's really all that it is a story.
So I brought up a point a moment ago that I'm sure some people sat back and thought, wow, that was a little harsh. And I spoke about the maturity of somebody. And your spiritual maturity, in my opinion, is your ability to be able to look at a larger breadth of information rather than just focusing on a single point and saying that is the right point. We know that every single person on the planet has had their own life experience, and that every single life experience has added up to the collective of who that person happens to be at that time. Just this morning or yesterday evening, I forget, Anniston turned around and she said, well, who am I today? Don't I get to be different on a topic? And she was, being a little tongue-in-cheekish with me. But the truth is, we do get to ask ourselves that. Who do we want to be today? And we're proud of never holding each other to the person that we used to be. We get to be the person that we want to be. But I find that when people are so often triggered, it's because they want people to be the way that they are based on their life experience, based on their upbringing, their situation, their circumstance. And when I use the term spiritual maturity, it's that you are able to see a vantage point, understand you have an opinion based on your life experience, and that you understand someone else has their life experience. They might be wrong, they might be right, they might be different, but you get to just be with the person regardless of what their thoughts or their feelings are, rather than being attached to what it is that they're thinking or feeling. And so we want you to contemplate that a little bit as you move forward now into the rest of what is going to be this election year. And then focusing in on conversations, topics that come up where you are really triggered and you feel that people need to believe what it is that you need to believe. You know, Annis and I almost lost a close family member because we had an altercation around religion. And I remember the last words were, "Say that again," like as if a threat, like, and we're going to have a throwdown, like ridiculous, because we had two completely different opinions on a topic.
That was a long time ago.
Very long time ago. But my point being is we had two opposing belief systems on a given topic, and we were going to throw away a friendship, love, family, like commitment, all these things over two separate opinions that today aren't even relevant or valid. And so how many of those relationships have you thrown away? How many people have you judged? What is the pain that you've put yourself through while going through these processes? And so I want to change the topic ever so slightly as we continue with this conversation. Anniston always loves to ask, what is it that we're consuming? So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because as we go into this period and we're focusing in on so many conversations, we get to make a decision. Am I going to be invested in this conversation, or am I simply just going to take a step back?
Great question. And I love that question, that about consuming, right? Because what you consume, you become. But before I answer that question and get into that, I remember reading something about Dr. Wayne Dyer had said, and it was a book, I think, one of his many books that I read. And Dr. Wayne Dyer, the late, great Dr. Wayne Dyer, was a great teacher to both Rudi and myself.
Love and miss him.
Yes. And he gave some advice. When you're in a situation where you're in a disagreement with someone, or somebody has a different opinion on something that isn't aligned with your belief, whether it be politics, whether it be religion, whether it just be a life choice that you're making, and they are sharing their belief with you forcefully, that the wrong thing to do in that situation is to hold on to your need to be right, because the other person's going to be holding on to their need to be right. And thus you're going to be clashing and trying to force your beliefs onto another person, which is never a good thing. And in fact, I would challenge you to think of the past situations when you've tried to do that. How has it worked out for you? Does it actually ever work? Does the person turn around and say, "Oh my gosh, you are so correct. My eyes have been opened," No, because people need to come to their truths on their own. And it really is just a silly exercise to try and force your beliefs onto somebody else, because they're never going to have your lens. They're never going to have your viewpoint or perception. So really the key is to create peace and harmony. And the best way to do that in that situation is if sharing something with you is to look at them, to listen to them, and then say, "Thank you so much for sharing. I'll take that under consideration." And then you move on. Because if you don't engage, it takes two people to have a conflict. It takes two people to have a disagreement. But if you stand in your knowingness of, I get to believe what I believe, and I get to let this person believe what they believe. And that doesn't have to affect me negatively. It's not my job to alter the beliefs of every single person on the planet. I get to allow other people to have their beliefs, and I get to stand in my integrity, but also in love. And by saying, thank you, I appreciate it. I'll take that under consideration. And then you move forward. Conversation's over. There's not much else for them to say, because you're not pushing back. You're not creating that resistance. So I took that advice from Dr. Wayne Dyer, and I have used it many times successfully. And I will tell you, I come from a family where I grew up in a very, not strict, but a religious household. And we have strong religious beliefs. And as I started growing and changing and asking lots of questions, I felt like my relationships were able to remain intact and healthy because I didn't need them to believe what I believed. As I was growing and changing, I didn't need them to agree in order to validate. And I think that's really where it comes from, Rudi, is like, I think we deep down have this need, this fear that what if our beliefs, is subconscious, unconscious fear that our beliefs aren't true. And so when someone says something that challenges those beliefs, we get all kinds of triggered, and it's all coming from a fear. And we need that validation. We need other people to agree, because then it validates ourselves. And so it really is kind of a selfish desire to begin with. So if you just take that desire out, then you can be in any conversation. You can be in any room peacefully, knowing that you get to coexist. We all get to coexist here in our uniqueness. There's room for a lot of different beliefs. There's room for a lot of different kinds of people. And we stop asking the impossible of other people.
I actually had an experience in business where I was in business with two other people, and we were just ahead on everything. We would clash and fight about absolutely everything. It could be the color of a newsletter. It could be anything. We would butt heads. And then out of necessity to really just improve the quality of my life, I just decided I would start to be more agreeable, because I didn't want to fight anymore. I just got to a point where I was exhausted. And so I don't want to say I took the higher road, because I selfishly just took the road that was going to create the most joy for me. And so when there was conflict, I just said, yep, okay, yep, I agree. And I just started to agree with everything, because I just thought, at the end of the day, is it really going to make that much of a difference? The font, the color of the paper, the new pricing structure, whether it was going to end in 95 or 00, like, really, does this stuff really matter? And so I just started being very, very agreeable. But what was so powerful about that period was that even though I was the one giving away his power by becoming agreeable, meaning I wasn't using my power to insert my opinion, I was using my power to just allow things to go back into a state of flow, we stopped having resistance. We all stopped fighting. We stopped bashing heads. And all of a sudden, things started to become really easy. And it's because they then started to become significantly more agreeable. And so I think it applies not necessarily just in the context of talking about religious beliefs and or political beliefs, but it could be just in anything. You do have to have two people to have two different opinions for there to be a form of a conflict.
So there's this book by David Hawkins, Dr. David Hawkins, called Power versus Force. And what you just described is basically what this book is about. If you've never read the book, I highly recommend it. It's definitely on one of my top 20, my top 20 book recommendations that I think should be required reading. And essentially what he speaks about is from a scientific perspective of what is true power. And what true power is not force. It's never force. In fact, force weakens you. When you're trying to force something onto someone innately, it's going to pull you down into more negative frequency emotions like anger and resentment. And you can feel it because you feel yourself getting triggered. It doesn't feel good. But when people, instead of fighting and trying to force, they instead focus on remaining in a heightened state of emotion of love, peace, gratitude, and even just calm, even just neutral. Neutral is much better than, just not having a reaction than having a negative one. That, just as you described, interestingly enough, the situation would resolve itself. And the because people wouldn't be responding to your negative energy. You know how it is when someone you can tell that you say something, they get really defensive, and then you get really defensive. And it's like you're responding to each other's energy. But the minute one person taps out of that game, just one person, and whoever is a part of this conflict, just all it takes is one person to choose love and to say, you know what? I choose to be happy instead of being right. Because it's a choice, guys. You can spend a lifetime dedicated, committed to being right. You need to be right on social media. You need to be right with all your friends and your family. You need to be the last word in every conversation. But I guarantee you that is not going to lead to happiness. And true happiness comes when you actually let go of the need to be right. And you realize that you never really needed it to begin with. And so I think this is so important right now because I don't know. Every time I go on social media, I'm just like, wow, you can feel the emotion coming off of some people's posts. Now, I just want to be really honest. Like Rudi and I, we don't talk politics with a lot of people. Does that mean we don't have viewpoints? Absolutely. Does that mean we don't have an opinion? Oh my gosh, yes. And it also doesn't mean that we don't have a voice. We do have a voice, and we do speak up for what we feel is important. But when we're speaking up for what is important, it's not against somebody else directly. It is just we're always in the game of enrollment, right? We want to enroll in a higher vision of life. And so when we see an idea or a way or an action or an organization to get behind, that's what we want to spend our time speaking into. We're not trying to speak to make somebody else wrong. We're trying to speak to inspire other people to a new way of thinking.
Which brings me back to my question on what it is that we're consuming. Because if you are wanting to be right and you're putting a stake in the sand that says, I believe in this political party and not that political party, and then you watch Fox News or CNN and you're consuming all this information because you want to have the next, viewpoint, the next thing to convey your position, that you are ultimately then consuming something, and what you consume, you become.
So Rudi and I don't watch the news. We haven't watched the news in I can't even tell you how long. I actually don't even know. I think I stopped watching before I met you. I had a roommate in college who always wanted to have CNN on every single morning. And, we were both going to college for an advertising and public relations degree. So as someone who was going to be in PR, you need to know what's going on. You needed to be able to write press releases and anyways. And I remember even then as a young college student, I noticed that living with her, I felt super stressed a lot of the times because I would be getting ready and I would just be overhearing the doomsday that was happening on the news, because every day it was talking about, job losses and recessions. And, back then it was all about the war in Iraq and 9/11. And I mean, it was so heavy that I would walk out that door feeling like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. And it wasn't until I moved out, and I love her. I mean, she's amazing, but it wasn't until I moved out and was living in a different situation that I wasn't hearing it all the time. I wasn't actively choosing to watch the news. I wasn't even listening to it. And I noticed a distinct difference in how I felt every day. I noticed that I was more hopeful. I was more inspired. I instead was looking to read books that were inspiring to me, listen to podcasts that were really inspiring to me. And so it was a really big learning lesson for me that we always have a choice, and you will always know by how you feel. So I would just urge you guys, like, if you're in a habit, which is just a habit, it's just a bunch of behavior that you've done so many times that it's something that you always do, but sometimes we don't question those habits. Rudi and I, when we first got married, we had this incredible basement, and we had a big screen TV, and this was the first time Rudi and I, we had traveled for our careers. So we were so excited to have a home that actually had a media room. And every night we would watch something on TV. And so we got really into Sons of Anarchy and these really Game of Thrones. I mean, we were watching these really intense series. We would spend our mornings having the most incredible spiritual morning. And then our evenings were spent watching blood and gore and guts and just killing. And it was so dark. And I remember having conversations with Rudi saying, I don't know, I always feel so good in the morning, but at night going to bed, it's almost like this heaviness because we watched this heaviness, and it really started to impact me. And so we started to create changes in our routine and be really mindful of what we're consuming, because we're energy, and what we consume is energy. And if you want to feel good, well, watch something that's going to make you feel good.
I remember when I stopped watching the news, it was 2006, and I was reading a book and then consuming as much online content like YouTube videos and so on around the topic. And this was the Abraham Hicks series. And Esther Hicks was channeling Abraham on stage for one of these sessions. And Abraham had spoken through and to her saying that you need to stay away from the news. And that every time you sit and you listen to all the global events that are happening, it is physically altering your ability to create what it is that you want to create. And you're now handing over a power to something outside of you. The example that Abraham used on that particular session was Grey's Anatomy, and saying, if you're watching Grey's Anatomy, every single show is designed around bringing a very unique, rare disease that they have to discover. They then list all of the ailments that anybody could have. And they mentioned that as each episode is aired, the US would see a spike in those diseases the following week, because people would be at home watching Grey's Anatomy. And then all of a sudden, somebody would have a really rare disease and, it would cause headaches. And, you would have tingling in the toe and you would have a numb kneecap. And then all these people around the world would say, oh my God, I've got a, headache and a tingling kneecap and all these ailments. And then all of a sudden they'd be diagnosed with these diseases, and they would see the spike after these shows. And I sat there thinking, I don't want that to be me. I want to be able to create in my life myself, and not give that up to CNN or Fox or Grey's Anatomy for that matter. And so I never, ever finished. And I think I was on season 4 or season 5. So I was pretty invested in the show at that point. And I just said right there and then that day, I'm done. And so I started being very selective about shows that I watched. And so if I watched a show, even if there was a little bit of guts and I had to be able to disassociate from the show. The moment I felt connected to the show, I could no longer watch it. And so Anniston and I today watch very, very little TV. And it's because I can pick up a book and I can control what I'm going to consume inside that book. How does that make me feel when I'm reading? Am I learning? What am I gaining? Is it a story that's whisking me away, or am I going into a new world where I'm learning a new skill? But television, I am simply opening myself up to anything that's going to come through on the other side. And I feel the same way about social media, about Instagram, about Facebook. And I also feel the same way about conversations with friends and family. You need to be able to curate and control the environment as much as what you can. And the reason we brought this conversation to a head is because as you go into some of these very difficult conversations, as we start to go into a very heated political arena where we talk about the divide, we get to be the glue, and we don't have to be a divide. And if you are walking into a conversation or a situation and you have heightened emotion around that, you're adding to the problem. But if you can walk in without the added emotion, you can walk in void of emotion, neutral, and just saying, well, I have an opinion and they have an opinion and everybody's entitled to their opinions, and the perfect thing's going to happen in the perfect place. And I'm going to take my position. I'm going to give them the freedom and the flexibility to take theirs and let it go. So it doesn't become more than that. You're now the glue and you're not adding to the problem. And so we are wanting to wish you just the most beautiful and joyous experience as you go from conversation to conversation, from situation to situation, and to be a little more intentional about the life that you're wanting to live. We recommend that you write out a list of what are all of the qualities of what it is that you want to have, be, do, and achieve in your life. Think about all of the qualities of what you want to have. And then the things that you're consuming and the conversations that you're having, are they adding or are they detracting from the person that you aspire to be?
This is really about being discerning. It's about discernment, right? And it's discerning what is good for you and what is not good for you. I have had so many conversations where I have expressed to someone, hey, I actually don't watch the news. And then I get shamed for it because they're like, what, you're just going to put your head in the sand? You're just going to not know what's going on. Then you'll be uneducated. You won't really understand the climate that's going on in the world. And, it's interesting, out of all the years that I haven't watched the news, I always know when something is important. I always find out some way, somehow, maybe it's a quick news headline, or it's in conversation. I've never not been educated about what's going on. The difference is I'm not consumed by it. The difference is I'm not allowing it to dictate my life. I'm not allowing that headline news story about an upcoming recession to hang over me and to give it power and what I get to create for my life, because I believe, and I know you believe, we're co-creators in our life. And that whatever we're focusing on, where your energy goes, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And that if you're focused on all the things that are going wrong around you, that's what you're going to see. But if instead you very intentionally use media, use social media to your benefit, use TV to your benefit, use Netflix streaming to your benefit. I love to watch documentaries. You can ask Rudi. I love to watch documentaries about really inspiring people doing inspiring things. That makes me feel good. We love to watch Friends. We love to laugh, and laughter is so powerful. Like, we like to watch funny shows that make us laugh with our kids. We love to watch The Voice, people expressing their gifts and talents and purpose. Like, there is so much good that you don't have to be left with the shows that are eliciting emotion out of you that isn't positive. Maybe it's adding to your fear, adding to your anger, to your sadness, because that's what these shows do, is they're geared to make you feel something. And when you feel something and you pair an emotion with a thought, well, my goodness, you are creating, and you are a powerful creator, which goes back to the whole Grey's Anatomy thing, which, by the way, I love Grey's Anatomy. I watched pretty much every single series that there was. I haven't watched it in a couple of years, but I did used to watch it quite a bit. But I see the thought process there. So I think that the most important takeaways today is that you always have a choice how you respond, and you get to choose. I want to say it again. You can choose to be right and to commit to being that rightness, no matter the cost that it comes at you, because it does come at a cost, and usually how you feel. Or you can choose to be kind. You can choose to be loving and accepting, and to let go of the need to be right. And you also then can choose where you put your energy, where you put your focus, and what you allow into your awareness, because whatever you allow into your awareness is going to be powerful for you in your life. And you don't have to let everything into your awareness. You don't have to know everything, but instead focus on the things that you want more of, and you'll get more of that.
Choose to be kind. We love you guys so much. Thank you for joining us for this episode. If there is something in this episode that absolutely resonated with you, please share it with us. Tag us on social media. If you think that there is somebody that might benefit from having heard this conversation, how about you tag them so that they can also gain benefit and or value from this episode? From Anniston and I, we freaking love you guys so much. Have an amazing day. And don't forget, be kind. With much love. We'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And we would love your support in leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check the show notes for more information on how you can find us online and on Instagram. Now go create an amazing day for yourself, and we'll see you again soon.